Video also Club TV. Bitte bei OG Emma. Und ich freue mich, dieses Video hier anfangen zu können, denn ich feiere diesen Dude wirklich tot. I really love this guy. That's why like, comment, subscribe zu meinem Channel. Macht die Notification weg. Lasst einen Kommentar da, denn dieses Video, diese Serie, die wir hier anfangen, denn hier geht es um den Bruder, den Homie, den besten Mann. Und ich folge ihm schon, seit er im Prinzip bei seinen 10.000 Abonnenten war. Und er hat jetzt seine 6 Millionen zusammen. Und deswegen möchte ich euch meine OGs auf meinem Channel zeigen und zu denen Reactions machen. Und ich hoffe, ich werde irgendwann diese YouTuber, weil das waren sozusagen meine Vorbilder und meine Inspirationsquellen durchzuziehen. Weil die haben teilweise in der Corona-Zeit angefangen. Und ich dachte auch in der Corona-Zeit, das ist meine Zeit für Reactions. Allerdings habe ich das alles ein bisschen misskalkuliert und jetzt ist meine Zeit für Reactions. Und ich bin am Start, ich bin am Mic. Ants Canada, du bist der Bruder. Ants Canada, shout out, thank you for all your work, for your researches and all what you do on your channel. And you are a hero to me, right? And your hobby was becoming something different. And I always wanted to make reactions, that's why I'm gonna react to your journey. I was seeing a lot, but not everything. From your journey, how you built up your vivarium. So, für die Leute, die nicht wissen, worum es hier geht, Alter, ihr werdet verblüfft sein. Ihr werdet einfach nur verblüfft sein. Deswegen lasst ein Like da, kommentieren nicht vergessen, was ihr überhaupt zu einem Vivarium denkt. Weil hier geht es um ein ultimatives Ökosystem, ein Ökosystem von Tieren, damit ihr versteht, worum es hier geht. Ist es möglich, ein Ökosystem zu erschaffen? Das frage ich mich manchmal auch zwischen uns Menschen. Ist es auch möglich, dass wir Menschen auf dem Planeten leben können, ohne dass wir halt uns umbringen und sowas? Und YouTube ist ein guter Weg, das ganze Mindset von einem Ökosystem an die nächsten Menschen weiterzugeben. Denn wir müssen uns nicht sehen, um in Kontakt zu sein. Denn ein Ökosystem ist ein Ökosystem und wir Menschen, die Gesellschaft bildet ebenfalls so eins. Daher, der Bruder hier ist der Motherfucking G und ich mag auch seine Productions. Daher wird das hier auf jeden Fall eine schöne Journey. Ich will nicht weiter labern und wir gehen hier direkt rein in das Video. Euer Boy, OG Emma.
I've always believed that ants are among the top most captivating organisms on the planet. And over the past 14 years that I've been creating videos of my ant colonies on this channel, living within their prodigiously crafted ant farms and terrariums, together we've marveled at how intelligent, resourceful, mighty, aggressive, and diverse ants truly are. But if there's one lesson we've learned time and time again, to
Aber was mir auch gerade einfällt, Leute, mein Bruder, der wollte sich Ameisen kaufen tatsächlich. Und ich finde Ameisen sehr, sehr spannend. Ich bin ein großer Biologie-Fan und das finde ich sehr, sehr spannend. Für die Leute, die sich für die Natur interessieren, für Tiere, für eine andere Welt abseits der Probleme, die wir in der Welt haben, finde ich Tiere sehr wundervoll. Ich liebe Tiere, ich bin mit Tieren jetzt irgendwo doch groß geworden. Nicht permanent. Mein Bruder hatte Tiere und ich kenne Menschen, die hatten selber auch Tiere. Ich habe mir so überlegt, selbst auch ein Tier zuzuschaffen. Eine Freundin von mir hat sich, glaube ich, dieses Jahr oder letztes Jahr, irgendwie so hat sich einen Hund geholt und ich denke mir auch, ich würde gerne einfach so ein Tier haben. Ich dachte über eine Qualle nach. Ich werde hier mal so ein Bild reinpacken von Quallen. Da gibt es nämlich auch eine Firma da draußen, die macht richtig coole Sachen. Die würde ich da irgendwie supporten wollen. Vielleicht kann ich von denen eine Qualle beziehen und das Ganze sehr nice in meinem Zuhause aufbauen. Und ich hätte vielleicht so auch andere Tiere. Jetzt nicht unbedingt bei mir zu Hause alles. Ich hätte gerne einen Gepard und solche Sachen, aber ich kann einen Gepard nicht bei mir zu Hause halten. Aber da ich Afrikaner bin, habe ich einen Kontinent, wo es diese Tiere gibt. Und ich könnte sie wahrscheinlich mit meinem YouTube und mit meinen Sachen schützen. Weil ich bin nicht ein Mensch und ein Mensch kann Tiere schützen. Und daher kann ich, zum Beispiel dieses Video hier einfach einen Blow-Up bekommen, Geld zu irgendeiner Tierschutzorganisation ballern. Deswegen, Shoutout an den Bruder hier mit seinem Terrarium.
really appreciate the true brilliance of ants, one needs to see them within the context in which they exist in the real world. You see, there's just something about seeing ant colonies living like they would out in the wild, interacting with real elements in their environment, hunting and killing prey, forming important symbioses with other creatures like springtails that have a pact with the ants to eat and clean up the ants' garbage. In nature, ants come face to face with other species of ants, and usually it's overlapping foraging trails, and on rare occasions, a full-out ant war over nesting territory and hunting rights. It's undeniable that watching ants in nature in a more true-to-life way is insightful and fascinating on a whole new level. Don't get me wrong, keeping ant colonies alone in an ant farm or terrarium like we usually do is an utter delight. But keeping pet ants in this way is still seeing a limited picture of the ants, like eyeing a tiny set of pixels that actually belong to a greater, more complex, and beautiful ecological tableau to which the ants actually belong in the world. Now for years, so many of you AC family, you awesome subscribers to the channel, have requested and pleaded for me to produce an ultimate ecosystem tank,
Nice.
a vivarium as they call it.
Und deswegen, ich bin Teil dieser Fam. Ich supporte den Bruder schon seit immer. Ich habe ihm noch kein Geld gesendet, aber ich like alle seine Videos. Ich hab glaube ich...
But time and time
Mal gucken, ob dieses Video geliked ist. Versteht ihr, was ich meine? Liken nicht vergessen. Supportet die Creator da draußen, denn dadurch kann man sehr vieles schaffen. Nur viele, warum? Es ist wie es ist. Like, comment, subscribe zu meinem Channel, damit wir die weiteren YouTuber, die nächsten Creator, die nächsten Generationen, das nächste Ökosystem in dieser Welt erhalten können. Von zu Hause aus. Versteht ihr, was ich meine? Ich habe keine Lust, ganz draußen zu sein.
Time again, I've dismissed entertaining such a request, mostly because I felt like I wasn't ready to tackle a project of such scale. I mean, how does one realistically assemble an entire ecosystem within a glass setup? With just the right balance of plants, fungi, prey creatures, predators, parasites, detritivores, decomposers, etc. Sure, you could create what is called a community terrarium by simply throwing in a bunch of organisms and plants into a tank, seeing how they interact. And many people have already done that. But for me, this is not a true ecosystem tank. In fact, technically, I don't think anyone could create a true ecosystem tank unless the tank itself was massive. And I mean the size of a room massive. The reason? Creatures, especially larger ones, need space to thrive, breed, and establish territory. And the bigger the enclosure, the more likely you are to create what resembles an ecosystem tank. Okay, but what about an ecosystem-like vivarium? Now this could be possible. I began to think further. Now in my old ant room, creating such an ecosystem vivarium was simply unfeasible because I just didn't have the space for a huge tank. But now that we have moved into our new ant room 2.0, I do actually have the space at my disposal now. I knew, however, creating the ultimate ecosystem vivarium would require me to apply my greatest of terrarium building skills and put my knowledge and experience of biology and animals to the test, and would be the most ambitious terrarium build I've ever done. But what finally pushed me to ultimately decide to take on an ecosystem vivarium project of such scale was this. After some thought, I realized that creating the ultimate ecosystem vivarium from an antkeeper standpoint could allow me to circumvent two very golden ethical rules of antkeeping that I usually never break. First, many of you long to see our ant colonies form hunting parties to kill living prey. But ethically, I always felt it was cruel to place living prey insects into an ant farm with no chance of escape or way to defend themselves.
Ja, true. Und jetzt hier gerade, an der Stelle möchte ich ein kleines Video machen für Cider. Das ist ein Browser-Extension-Plugin, welches ihr nutzen könnt, um auf YouTube und Netflix Untertitel zu bekommen. Das Ganze hat ebenfalls auch die Möglichkeit, einen Webassistenten zu haben, der auf KI gefördert ist oder mit KI funktioniert. Das heißt, ihr könnt im Browser direkt mit der KI schreiben, die KI antwortet euch. Keine Bildgeneration, sondern reines Webassistenten-Dingen. Es macht auch Summaries, wenn du auf YouTube bist, es erzählt dir, was das Skript war und so weiter und so fort. Aber mein Lieblingsfeature ist die Übersetzung. Denn ich habe nämlich versucht, etwas zu finden, womit ich meine YouTube-Videos machen kann, um Übersetzungen zu haben für meine Audience. Ich habe vergessen, das jetzt anzustellen, denn wenn man hier oft und auch Untertitel geht auf YouTube, ich demonstriere das Ganze einmal ganz kurz. Oh, okay, wir haben hier deutsche Untertitel. Da hat das finde ich sehr, sehr stark. Der Bruder hat auf jeden Fall gelevelt. Ich weiß, damals gab es das Ganze nur auf Englisch und irgendwann kamen ja die Untertitel in YouTube mit rein. Auch nur auf Englisch dann und jetzt haben wir wahrscheinlich auch Deutsch. Ich weiß nicht, was er alles getan hat dafür, um das reinzukriegen. Wahrscheinlich hat er echt als Übersetzer reingeladen. Denn YouTube hat noch nicht die KI oder die Tools automatisch Übersetzungen anzubieten. Das muss man halt dann auch irgendwie generiert haben und auch hochgeladen haben. So, hier. Ich nutze aber allerdings dann doch sehr gerne das hier. Was ist der Unterschied? Ganz simpel. Wir haben hier einmal den englischen Teil, genauso wie eben übersetzt, und wir haben den deutschen Teil. Und daher finde ich es halt sehr, sehr praktisch. Ihr könnt da nämlich ihr könnt da quasi die Übersetzung haben, was sehr praktisch ist. Ich denke mal, für dieses Video finde ich es eher schöner, wenn ich einfach nur eine deutsche Übersetzung habe. Deswegen frage ich mich, wie gut das ist. Weil ich gehe mal davon aus, wenn jemand das selber gemacht hat, ist es ein bisschen akkurater wie die KI. Weil die KI ja noch übersetzt und die KI wird zwar besser mit der Zeit, aber schaut noch ein bisschen, bis die KI wirklich auf dem Top ist. Daher an der Stelle Cider und jetzt gehen wir weiter mit dem Video und let's go.
Like they would in nature. So I've always fed pre-killed feeder insects to minimize the suffering. But in an ecosystem vivarium, the prey insects would have more of a fighting chance, more space to run away and places to hide. And only the weakest.
Jetzt habe ich das Gefühl, ich sollte das anmachen, denn ich denke jetzt gerade an meine Zuschauerschaft. Manche Leute können vielleicht nicht hören. Und ich kann nur lesen. Und dann, wenn du das so in einer Sprache hast, ist es blöd. Wenn du es in Englisch und Deutsch hast, für die englischen Zuschauer, die nur lesen, und für die deutschen Zuschauer, die nur lesen, habt ihr ja das. Und die hören können, haben die englische Stimme. Denn ich verstehe eigentlich, was er sagt in Englisch. Daher habe ich da kein Problem.
And less apt prey insects would end up being killed by the ants. That would be just natural selection, which ethically, I could jive with. Second, many of you over the years have also requested for me to mix ant colonies together into a single enclosure to see what would happen. But again, ethically for me, this was cruel and tantamount to cockfighting, as the losing weaker ant colonies would have no place to retreat if they wanted to. But in an ultimate ecosystem vivarium, with an ample amount of space, weaker ant colonies finding themselves in an altercation with other more powerful colonies could have a fair chance to retreat to safety if they needed to, much as weaker ants would in the wild. Another advantage I foresee is that the ant colonies in an ecosystem-type vivarium would have natural population regulators, as some ants could fall prey to predators like frogs, lizards, or spiders. So the colonies wouldn't be able to just grow and grow unchecked, which has happened to me in the past. So, in light of all of this, I finally decided the time was now to give this ecosystem vivarium build a try. So AC family, for all of you who've been wanting for years for me to create the ultimate ecosystem vivarium, those of you who've been requesting for me to mix my ant colonies together in a single enclosure, and indeed, even those of you who've wanted to see the ants hunting and killing live prey, and not just pre-killed insects handed to them on a plate. I'm pleased to announce that I am finally ready to take on the challenge in the name of science and document what would happen if I placed multiple ant colonies in one massive ecosystem-type vivarium. With this project, we'll finally get to marvel at the true brilliance of the ants in their natural element, within the context in which they exist in the real world. This is part 1 of creating an ecosystem vivarium, ruled by several ant colonies of mine. But the ants will not have it easy. For the first time, they will have to contend with the elements, predators, hunting challenges, dangers, and each other. Will we be able to build the ultimate ecosystem vivarium? Will the various ant colonies we choose to place into our grand ecosystem thrive, or will they falter at the hands of the vivarium? It's time we lay the groundwork and find out. Welcome to the story of how I build the ultimate ecosystem vivarium for ants, here on the Ants Canada Ant Channel. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. Welcome to the AC family. Enjoy. Guys, it's my greatest honor to start this huge ant vivarium project with you all, as I've been waiting for just the right time to begin. And I figured there couldn't be a better time to embark on such a vivarium building journey with you guys than now, as it would be the perfect celebration of reaching 5 million subscribers on the channel. At the time of creating this first episode, there are a little over 21,000 subscribers left until we hit that milestone. So guys, my hope is that the AC family finally reaches 5 million subs at some point during the course of this long-awaited ant ecosystem series, for which I have some very big and exciting plans. So, if you are watching and haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do hit that subscribe button so you too could follow and be part of this truly groundbreaking milestone ant experiment. I truly appreciate the support and cherish every sub. Alright, so before we go over the plans for this giant vivarium build, let's start from the beginning. An ecosystem vivarium. I had so many questions and lots of decisions to make for such an ambitious project to work. Like, how big of a tank are we talking about? Where in my ant room would we build it? What type of habitat and design would it be? What animals and various critters would be living inside it? Would it have a complex aquatic portion to it? And of course, most important of all, what ant species and existing ant colonies of ours would be moving into the ecosystem vivarium? All of these questions burdened me night and day for a good few months. But in this video, I'll be answering and addressing all of these very important.
Ich habe hier an der Stelle eine exekutive Entscheidung getroffen. Da ich das Ganze ja schon kenne, bis zu einem bestimmten Teil, möchte ich für euch erstmal nur weil das Video geht ja hier 30 Minuten und der Bruder, ich werde die Highlights aus seinen Videos zusammenfügen, denn manchmal, ich habe nämlich alle seine Videos gesehen, es gibt Stellen, die dragt er ganz schön, damit, wir sind auf YouTube, wir möchten ja auch irgendwo euch Zuschauer entertainen und je länger ihr schaut, desto mehr Conversion Rate können wir bekommen und das trägt, man kann ja eine Mathematik draus machen. Allerdings möchte ich nur die Highlights haben, denn selbst ich bin ein bisschen gelangweilt, wenn zu viele Dinge gedragt werden. Und er wird auf jeden Fall uns zeigen, er hat es ja gesagt, das ganze Ökosystem. Und da würde ich halt gerne ein bisschen voranschreiten mit dem Tempo in dem Aufbau. Denn er hat wirklich vieles gemacht, was ich euch zeigen möchte. Und ich möchte das euch relativ zügig zeigen. Denn wenn ich jetzt in jedem Video, was ich für euch drehe, das ist das erste, nur eine Folge von ihm reinpacke, wird das Ganze sehr, sehr lange dauern. Deswegen habe ich da die Entscheidung getroffen, in einem Video wie diesem mehrere Folgen von ihm zu schauen und das dann irgendwie zusammenzupacken für euch.
Questions and going over all my plans for our great ant ecosystem vivarium. But guys, do stay tuned until the end because I will be needing your help with certain decisions especially with deciding which of our currently existing ant colonies we will be adding into the vivarium. I want all of you to be an influential part of all this historic AC ant lore. Oh, and I'll also be showing you a concept sketch for what our great ecosystem vivarium might hopefully look like. So do stay tuned for all that coming up. So AC family, let's begin. Let's start with the plan, location, and size. As mentioned, the ecosystem world needs to be big for it to truly work, but I needed it to be small enough that I can still get in and properly film all the action going on. So, I've decided that we will need to create a floor-to-ceiling glass enclosure. Something really tall, really wide, but something not too deep. This here is a lifeless terrarium I built using fake plants, currently in my bedroom. I foresee something kinda like this, but using real plants, more soil, and a ton of animals and critters living inside it. I also need to make something much, much bigger than this for the ecosystem vivarium to actually work. Because as mentioned, a massive terrarium would allow for plenty of space for the creatures within to thrive and proliferate, hunt, escape predation, and breed, as well as for various ant colonies to establish safety zones and individual territories. So let's move on now to the ant room and talk tank size and location. Here is our ant room 2.0, a very large space to work with, which is perfect because our vivarium will truly require plenty of room. After lots of thought and consideration, I was thinking this area would be best. So guys, get this. We would simply have to relocate Volcania, our fire ant paludarium, somewhere else, perhaps off to the side, and then set up our massive ecosystem vivarium here. The side of it would be pressed up against this pillar and extend all the way to the middle of the ant room. That makes the entire tank over 10 feet long. It would be as deep as the pillar, so approximately 33 inches deep, and would have upper housing for lights, as well as sit on a little riser, so we don't have to sit on the floor to watch the action, making the entire vivarium approximately 6 feet tall. In total, this makes the entire tank over 1,200 gallons in size.
Crazy.
1,200 gallons. I have never in my life built a terrarium that large, let alone a vivarium with various creatures living in it. Speaking of which, I'm sure a lot of you are now wondering, Ants Canada, what creatures will you be putting in it? Well, I'll tell you what I have in mind, but before I get to that, we have to address this very important detail first. Biome type, meaning to say, will our vivarium be a desert-type habitat, a semi-aquatic marshland-type world, perhaps a grassy plains-type ecosystem? Well, AC family, I've decided to go with tropical forest for our ecosystem, simply because I live in the tropics, and all the ant colonies I keep are tropical ants for my yard. So it would be much easier to source the plants, ants, and cohabiting creatures that will be going into our ecosystem world than if we were to go with some other type of biome. I will simply keep adding in more and more animals and creatures over time as I find them outside to biodiversify our great vivarium. Now, one thing I wanted to address is a water feature. I do want our ultimate ecosystem vivarium to also have a water feature. But here's the thing. Originally, I delighted at the idea of an awesome waterfall feeding a cool river, running through the setup and emptying into a pretty sizable pond, housing a ton of various tropical fish, beautiful aquatic plants, and other creatures, as many tropical forests do have waterfalls, ponds, rivers, marshes, etc. But the thing is, our space, though large, is still somewhat limited, and my hopes is that the vivarium will host a broad array of terrestrial species, ants and otherwise. And most of the land species I hope to add don't typically live right next to a sizable body of water, and probably won't do well in soils that are overly wet either. My fear in adding a large marsh area, for instance, would definitely look really nice, with lots of fish, shrimp, snails, perhaps even a newt or axolotl, but it might also be a drowning hazard for many ants and critters I'm thinking of adding in, who typically don't live that close to bodies of water. If our setup was the size of an entire room, then yes, perhaps it might be safe to add a larger aquatic area, But for our somewhat limited vivarium parameters, I foresee a ton of earthworms, ants, and other critters crawling into the water, drowning, fouling it up, and just causing a lot of complications. Unlike fire ants, which can form cool rafts on water and are actually quite proficient living around bodies of water, most ants do not do well living around deep water 24/7. So I'm still undecided whether or not we should add a complex body of water in the setup. If ever, more of a little waterfall emptying into a kind of shallow puddle, a place for our ecosystem creatures to drink. Or in the case of amphibians, have a good soak. But that's it. I don't know. What do you guys think? Okay, and now it's time we go over what animals I've been hoping to add to our great ecosystem vivarium. Let's leave which ant colonies we want in for afterward. I wanted to mention my wish list for animals first, as this may or may not affect your choice regarding which ants we choose for the vivarium. Now, it took me a while to come up with this list, but I think you guys will truly love it. Listen to this. First, let's start with the most basic of creatures, the soil creatures. These will be the most abundant of creatures in our ecosystem, as they play a very important role in the ecosystem world we create. Now, the soil I'll be placing into our ecosystem terrarium will be bioactive, meaning it will host a plethora of living soil creatures, namely earthworms, isopods, springtails, mites, millipedes, and even land crabs. These terrestrial creatures will be important at converting decaying and organic material in our ecosystem world into valuable fertilizer for the plants of the ecosystem to thrive. Speaking of plants, as you may have guessed, I will be using a variety of tropical plants and mosses to bring life and vibrancy to the ecosystem. It will help provide cover and habitat for the array of creatures and even ants living in our ecosystem. I may also consider adding carnivorous plants, if you guys think we should add them. It's come for all of you watching to be part of this channel's history and ant lore, to choose what species of ants we will be moving into our vivarium. So please listen carefully, because I'll be explaining why I think each ant species and colony may or may not be a good fit for our ecosystem. I'll be asking you to give me your preferred ant species list as a comment in this video at the end. So, you can start a working ant list now as a comment, then hit send by the end of the video to post it for me and everyone else to see in the comment section. Feel free to also give your reasons on why you choose the ant species you did for our ecosystem vivarium. Seeing all your feedback will surely help me decide, as you guys never fail to have brilliant ideas and input on this channel. Sound good? Now, I should mention that our goal should be to choose ant species that will not undoubtedly annihilate each other, but hopefully coexist together. And by coexist, I don't exactly mean hold hands and sing kumbaya, forming peaceful alliances, though if that did happen, that would surely be cool to see. But rather establish clear territorial boundaries and foraging trails within the ecosystem that the colonies will simply defend as they would in the wild and not go into full-out war over. In nature, ants encounter other species of ants all the time and don't end up going to war with each other, as this would be costly both energy-wise and worker force-wise. I think we should try our best to choose ants that occupy different niches within the habitat. For instance, trapjaw ants nest in soil, and the chances that they would end up going to war with arboreal ants that nest high up in the wood, like our chromatogaster ants, is pretty slim, because they just don't nest in the same type of space. So, in choosing the ant species, guys, I hope to limit the amount of ant species that nest in the same niche to simply 1 or 2 ant species max. Cool? Alright, here we go. First, let's start with soil-dwelling ants. I have a few in mind that I think would make great residents within our tropical forest ecosystem. The trapjaw ants, whom we have recently named the snapdragons. This colony has been thriving in their current setup for years now. The colony is composed of several thousand ants, but within our large ecosystem, I don't think they're big enough to completely dominate all the soils from the get-go, which is good. My hunch is they will claim a large chunk of soil, perhaps under some large driftwood or rock, and simply grow steadily outward from there. They're also amazing ants to watch and hunt living prey. So I think our trapjaw ants would make epic additions to our ecosystem. If you think the snapdragons would make worthy additions to our ecosystem tank, add them to your official ant species list entry now in the comments. Next, our spades, our cute Meranopus bicolor ant colony, a species dear to us, as we were the first in the world to discover they existed in my country of residence. They've been completely thriving in their new open-concept bowl terrarium I placed them in. And though they also nest in soil, I think simply due to their smaller size, ferocity, and protective spiny hairs, they won't be in too much danger if they ever come face to face with the trapjaw ants. This is my educated guess anyway. What do you guys think? If you feel the spades should be added into the vivarium, add them to your official ant species list entry now in the comments. In terms of our Dracula ants, I actually prefer not to add this colony because I'm still trying to film the process of the workers drinking the blood of their larvae for scientific purposes. And if we add our Dracula ants into the mix, they'd surely disappear into the darkness of the soils, and I won't be able to do that. Perhaps if I find another Dracula ant colony, I'll consider it. But for now, no on the Draculas. Sorry guys. Now I know what a lot of you are thinking. Fire ants. And to this I say a flat out no. I don't want to include fire ants into our ecosystem because, as they normally do in real ecosystems, they become totally invasive and throw off the ecological balance, outcompeting, displacing, and even killing other terrestrial ant colonies. Remember that our aim here is to establish an ecological balance of sorts, not a stark plot of Earth ruled by one dominating ant species. Adding fire ants into our ecosystem would be a terrible mistake, in my opinion. Same goes for our black crazy ants. They would totally wipe out the setup clean.
Yo, ey, ich will euch nicht, ja, das ist crazy, denn ich habe es ja gesehen und ich habe mich daran erinnert, ich will euch nicht spoilern, weil das ist ja eine Serie. Allerdings werden Black Crazy Ants in seinem Vivarium auftauchen. Das kann ich euch jetzt schon mal verraten, denn er hat sie nicht reingetan, allerdings waren sie schon drin. Weil manchmal ist es so, wenn du dein Terrarium, Vivarium baust, du siehst ja nicht jedes Tier. Und es waren auf jeden Fall Black Crazy Ants mit dabei und die haben sein Leben auf jeden Fall schwer gemacht.
Of life. Non-negotiable, they aren't going in. Sorry Fire Ant and Black Crazy Ant fans. But what about the Fire Ant's native counterparts, our marauder ants, named the Leviathans? Yes, we could add them to our ecosystem, and they are native ants. However, our Leviathans are just so big and powerful that they would surely wipe out all prey insects within the ecosystem enclosure, as well as any and all soil-dwelling ant species. If the ecosystem enclosure was as big as a room, maybe that could work, but for our current plan, I don't think the Leviathans would be a good fit for our ecosystem world. Sorry, Leviathan fans. Alright, now let's move on to another niche, wood-dwelling ants. I have some carpenter ants that would truly make great additions to the ecosystem. I have a very active and exploding colony of a yellowish-orange species of carpenter ants, as well as a large black species, both currently living in an AC test tube portal starting setup from antscanada.com. Both colonies are just about ready to take their next step and be moved into a larger home. I believe with enough rotting wood slung all over the vivarium, we just might be able to house both species of these carpenter ant colonies in our ecosystem world. Again, this is just a guess, and I'm not 100% sure it would work. We could err on the side of caution and only put one carpenter ant colony in, but let me know in your species list if you feel one or both carpenter ant colonies, or none, should be moved into our vivarium. Another ant that lives in wood that I think could share the niche amicably with the carpenter ants are our unidentified chromatogaster ants that currently reside on an open concept island This species is also of scientific significance because they just might be a brand new undiscovered species. Still waiting for the results, but due to their tiny size, I think they could be added to our ecosystem too, choosing wood unoccupied by carpenter ants without problems. Let me know in your species list in the comments. Our blades of Midas, our huge Polyrachus ant colony, who create debris nests among wooden structures, could also be added to our ecosystem. But they're truly a big colony, and I'm unsure how they would do in our vivarium. I suspect they may or may not go to war with carpenter ants, sharing the branches, but would definitely win if it ever happened, simply due to the numbers game. So I'm inclined to say no to the Polyrachus, just to err on the side of caution. Sorry about that, Blades of Midas fans. Now, AC family, there is one other species of ant that I'm unsure would work, but in my mind, could. You see, it's one of my favorite ant species of all, and if the ecosystem is designed correctly, these ants just might actually work. But this brings me to my biggest question of all for you guys. Do we add an apex predator ant species to our ecosystem? Asian weaver ants. Perhaps one of the most powerful predatory native ants of the tropical ecosystems they're part of. Certainly the apex native ant predators in my yard, if added to our tropical forest world, would nest within the leaves of any tree or bush we place into our ecosystem, but would forage for their food at all levels of the tank, from the highest of treetops to the soils. I currently don't have a weaver ant colony in the ant room, but we can certainly collect one from any of the trees in my yard. But my fear is if the weaver ant colony gets too powerful, they could totally wipe out all prey insects, as well as predators, including lizards, and possibly all other ant colonies within the system. Nothing really would be safe from a massive and ravenous weaver ant colony foraging all corners of the tank. But what if we added a young weaver ant colony with just a few thousand workers? Would a young weaver ant colony be of danger to the system, where some workers fall victim to biological population regulators like predators? I actually don't know. Here's where I would love to hear your opinions though. I'm totally okay with not adding weavers to the ecosystem too. Let me know your thoughts in your species list.
Wenn man so wirklich darüber nachdenkt, wir reden hier über ein Ökosystem, wo alle Tiere versuchen zusammenzuleben, also Ameisen. Dann einmal, wie er sagt, halt Soul Creatures, halt Tiere, die im Dreck leben, sag ich jetzt mal so. Und dann baut er auf, dann braucht er dafür Predator, dafür braucht er halt Jäger. Dann kommen Ameisen dazu, Spinnen dazu, da wird es weiter aufgebaut. Kommt dann irgendwann eine Schlange dazu. Kann die Schlange da drin leben? Kann man da eine Eidechse reinpacken? Würde diese Eidechse überleben und werden die Ameisen diese Eidechse übernehmen? Und das ist das ganze Spannende an dem ganzen Projekt, was er da macht. Denn er wird das Ganze richtig stark aufbauen. Denn ich habe schon einiges gesehen. Allerdings habe ich gesehen, er hatte sein Vivarium quasi erweitert. Und seine Erweiterung, das ist einfach nur Genie. Weil da merke ich halt, dass so die Leute im Millennium oder Gen Z so, wir sind sehr innovativ und wir haben sehr spannende Gedanken, die auf jeden Fall die Zukunft prägen werden. Und er hat zum Beispiel in der Corona-Zeit die Zukunft geprägt mit dieser Idee, für seine Studien und für seine Biografien sag ich ja, seine biologischen Arbeiten, so rum, hat angefangen halt sein Vivarium zu bauen und hat Ameisen studiert und mehr und baut auch selber seine Tanks und verkauft die. So, voll geil, sehr nice. Non-stop.
I am on a mission to create the ultimate ecosystem vivarium, and I've already begun the groundwork. Planning, choosing a location in my home to build it, ordering the glass and materials, and most fun of all, choosing the animals that will be living inside it. The over 1,200 gallon tank vivarium will be complete with living ant colonies of mine, an array of tropical plants, fungi, prey creatures, parasites, detritivores, possibly a waterfall, river, and a pond, and of course, predators. I knew from the start of this project that in order to succeed in constructing this ultimate ecosystem vivarium, one of the prerequisites would definitely be having a good team of predators, because they keep populations of prey insects and animals from overpopulating. In nature, having a biodiverse score of predators in an ecosystem is a good indicator of a healthy ecosystem. And my, has Mother Nature crafted some supreme predators with such stunning diversity into the most surprising of shapes and the most adept of hunting techniques. And needless to say, I just love predators, and it seems the majority of you who are subscribed to and watch this channel also share a love for predators above all organism types in an ecosystem, based on a poll I ran this week. Now, I've been mulling over what selection of predators I want to add to our ultimate ecosystem vivarium, because, well, you can't just add a bunch of predators into a tank and expect them to coexist. Several things could go wrong. They could eat each other, injure or kill each other over territory or food, or completely exhaust the shared prey supply in the vivarium. I knew compatibility was key here, and this project was already testing all my skills and knowledge I've acquired over my lifetime of animal husbandry and nature knowledge. But guys, I have some great news. I believe I've come close to achieving the official list of predators for our vivarium. And in fact, this week, I'm thrilled to already introduce to you today 2 new arrivals, both awesome predators, currently in my ant room, just waiting patiently to be rehomed into our ultimate vivarium once built. I also have others on the way, but I'll be needing your help and opinions today with finalizing my official predatory species wish list. So stay tuned, because I want you all involved with the decision process as we embark on this adventurous biological journey to build the ultimate ecosystem tank, the largest terrarium build I've ever done in my entire life. This is part 2 of creating an ecosystem vivarium, as we take a look at potential predators we'll be adding in, what predatory species of animals will work best for our ambitious ecosystem vivarium, which predators can coexist in a single enclosure and not fight or eat each other. Shall we add an apex predator to the vivarium? And would such a thing be safe for the ecological balance we're trying to achieve? What are these first 2 new predator animals I caught for our ultimate ecosystem vivarium? It's time we explore the amazing world of predators and find out. Welcome to the story of how I build the ultimate ecosystem vivarium, here on the Ants Canada Ant Channel. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. Welcome to the ACM. Enjoy. Guys, it's my greatest honor to start this huge ant vivarium project with you all. And as mentioned in part 1 of this ecosystem vivarium series, there couldn't be a better time to embark on such a vivarium building journey with you guys than now, as it would be the perfect celebration of reaching 5 million subscribers on the channel. At the time of creating this second episode, there are a little over 13,000 subscribers left until we hit that milestone. So guys, my hope is that the AC family finally reaches 5 million systems watching. So as mentioned, that I can't wait to show you guys. In this video, I'll be feeding them and building them a luxury terrarium suite as a temporary home until we complete the construction of our ultimate ecosystem terrarium, which may be a few more weeks from now, because the meantime, I'm using this period to research. I'll also be going over what other predators I'm thinking of adding into our vivarium. But as mentioned, I'll be needing your sorts. And my, look at that cryptic color pattern. It just screams, I'm just a piece of mossy bark. You can move along now. On the underside, you can see its white underbelly and sticky toe pads. So seeing it now was just amazing. What should we name it, guys? Let me know in the comments. I marveled at its smooth, shiny golden scales, lined with bands of black and a grayish belly. I find our sunskink here super cute. How about you guys? Really a lot of people around, so perhaps I'm one of the first humans he's ever seen. But for sure this roach wasn't the first he's seen, as forest roaches make up a good part of their diet in the wild. My heart jumped into my throat. It was now time to create their luxury suites, to properly welcome them home to the ant room. Vertical space would be perfect for our tree frog. And this tank here, with its greater horizontal space, luxury suites, in which our tree frog and...
Ich spule hier und da ein bisschen vor. Ich möchte hier im Video natürlich das Ganze komplett, das Ganze hier so informativ wie möglich halten. Und manche Stellen, ich habe das ja schon mal gesehen, und manchmal kriege ich Flashbacks zu Stellen, wo ich weiß, dass er eigentlich nur gehypt ist und spricht. Und es weniger informativ ist, sondern er einfach nur seinen Geek rauslässt. Was auch ganz cool ist. Dennoch möchte ich diese Videos nicht zu lange haben, daher gehe ich halt auch durch die Folgen.
Skink would be residing until our ultimate vivarium was complete. So, I went straight to work. First, a drainage layer. I used some crushed coral I had laying around, but gravel or anything coarse also works. This drainage layer will ensure the soils don't get waterlogged, which can kill plants, and that there are no anaerobic spots, which could produce toxins for many soil creatures. Next, for ground medium, I used cocoa peat, but I will also be using some bioactive soil to ensure these terrariums are somewhat self-cleaning at soil level. And after 2 hours of work, this was the end result. AC family, behold, the 2 luxury suites of our new predators. A cloud of humidifying mist enveloped them as they awaited their future beloved inhabitants. Let's open the tree frog's terrarium.
Oh, wie episch er das macht. Richtig geil.
Ah, there we go. And blow into the sunskink's terrarium home. To make it look like the 2 terrariums were somewhat connected and part of the same world, while these 2 acting to provide each of the in. This tank is a lush and tall tropical waterfall corner of paradise that I think our tree frog premium feature joy and our tree frog doesn't dry out and has a supply of water to keep its skin hydrated. I've also decked the suite out with some broad-leafed plants, syngonium, which will offer the tree frog cover in case it wants to hide. I've also placed in a long and winding branch for climbing. Overall, I feel our tree frog will truly love this slice of tree frog heaven we've made for it. Alright, now let's move on to next door, to our sunskink Shangri-La. This terrarium features a basking spot under a heat lamp and UV bulb for our lizard to sunbathe and heat up as it so wishes. Towards the cooler end of the tank, we have a variety of plants.
Hauptsache er spielt diese Karibik-Mucke. Sauber, du bist im Urlaub. Ich feier den Jungen, ne?
And guys, check this out. My favorite feature of the tank is this. This protruding rock here is the cover to a secret hidden master bedroom fit for a sunskink. Here's the entrance to the master's, but we'll need to keep it dark if we're to attract the sunskink in for bed. Discover his hidden chamber. I made sure, by the way, to place all plants and his hide far away from the basking site, as the heat can be too much for the plants and for the lizard once it's all heated up. Oh yeah, forgot to mention, our sunskink also has a refreshing little pool to soak himself and have a drink from. Into their new home, his new home with wonder. And with a little guidance, he happily leaped into the front cover. I was still cosplaying hope you like your new tree frog. Alright, top spotted him. He was breathing heavily, probably jarred by the transfer, but soon he relaxed and began to inspect his new surroundings. He made his way on top of the rock, which made up his sleeping quarters. Oh, would he find his secret hideout? He proceeded forth to explore some more, and past his master bedroom, wandering to the other warmer side of the tank. I loved watching him explore as he made his way to the rocky outcrop of the basking site. This place is rather warmish, he thought. He stayed there for a good minute, soaking up the warmth. Oh, how I loved watching him all sprawled out, absorbing those rays, like he would in the wild. What a daytime right now. I wondered if it would be willing to eat now. A roach. I dropped it in. Suddenly, a movement caught our skink's eye, and bam! In for the kill, without a second thought. Wow, that was awesome! The skink proceeded to consume the tasty fattened roach. It swallowed the entire roach whole. Well, wasn't that a tasty treat? Now we know if this lizard does move into our ultimate ecosystem vivarium, roaches will definitely need to be an available prey insect. How about another on the scene to witness this bake, which would help him digest his food. It was truly awesome to see that our lizard was already making himself at home and using the amenities of his brand new luxury 10-minute. He became so tired by now. I watched him crawl back to his tank, and he probably ate the roaches I stuck in there for him, as I couldn't find any anywhere. Now seeing him against the choice to seek out a much more tight and hard to get to space, because our secret hide here was still pretty cavernous, and the opening still rather large enough for a medium-sized snake to fit into and eat him, which is a real danger these lizards need to contend with. It makes sense that the sun skink would instinctively sleep in a hard-to-get-to space every night, perhaps burrowing tightly underground for his own safety from other predators. But this brings me now to where I really need your help. So, I have an admission, guys. As I was filming today's episode, I had one of my favorite lizards to keep. As you know, we've had a veiled chameleon on the channel before, but sadly, I had to rehome it during the pandemic ant room apocalypse, where I had a feeder scarcity issue due to lockdowns in my city, and had to downsize my pet collection drastically. Well, I no longer have that problem today, and feel our vivarium might be an excellent home for a chameleon. I'm unsure if frogs and/or medium-sized ground lizards, like our skink, would be safe though, because I'm certain a hungry chameleon would go for anything that fits into its mouth. So I don't think we'd be able to house much else if we had a chameleon patrolling the vivarium. Another thing about chameleons is that they also eat plants, so it might be a substantial herbivore in our vivarium, which may or may not be a problem. The second apex predator I'm considering possibly getting is a tokay gecko. Man, this has been a dream lizard species since I was a kid, and they're also native to where I live. But wild tokay geckos are protected. I can legally source a captive bred tokay gecko from my breeder friend, so it's definitely possible for us and our vivarium project. These lizards are huge and a bit scary and eat a lot of insects, but just one of these geckos would be like having a T-Rex patrolling the vivarium, capable of consuming a lot of prey insects and other animals in the tank. Frogs and smaller lizards would be in constant danger. But then again, should I even be worrying about other creatures, seeing as an ecosystem is simply what we're trying to achieve? In other words, if for instance our cute sun skink ever failed to burrow underground by night when the tokay emerges and fall prey to a tokay gecko, wouldn't that just be the ecosystem working as it should? Why am I okay with insects being eaten, but vertebrates not? I don't know. Double standard again. But bottom line, if we do get an apex predator, we will not be able to have a bunch of other smaller predators running or hopping around. Also, we cannot have both chameleon and a tokay gecko living together in our vivarium, because I know tokays are notorious for being pretty vicious, so I would fear for the chameleon's safety, as both lizards are arboreal. Anyway, do let me know what you guys think. Should we get a chameleon or a tokay gecko, or neither, and just stick with a team of smaller, more placid predators that can live together? And about our tree frog and sun skink, should we just set them free back into my yard? I can always buy captive-born and raised frogs and lizards for our vivarium. And the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm feeling good about this option. There are many other possible tropics predator, like a chameleon or a tokay. As we do every year at antscanada.com, it's antscanada.com and enjoy your...
Okay. Ich beende das Video an dieser Stelle und werde natürlich gleich die nächste Folge abdrehen. Denn wie immer, like, comment, subscribe zu meinem Channel. Euer Boy OG Emma. Bye.